If you're a coach or consultant creating valuable content on LinkedIn, but nobody's reading it, the problem isn't your content, it's your hook. You're spending 30 minutes writing a thoughtful post with actionable insights, and people are just scrolling right past it. And you're thinking to yourself, well, why? Because it's your first line, the hook didn't actually stop them. So here's the truth. On LinkedIn, you've really got less than 2 seconds to capture someone's attention. They're scrolling through their feed, they're distracted, they're looking for something actually worth their time. And if your hook doesn't immediately grab them, they're going to end up keep scrolling. So it doesn't matter how valuable the rest of your post is, if the hook fails, then nobody reads it. So throughout the course of this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to write hooks that actually stop the scroll. I'm going to walk you through the psychology behind what actually makes people stop and read, and then I'll give you 7 proven hook formulas that you can then use immediately to make every single post much more engaging. And it's the same hook framework that I've used to build a presence of over 55,000 followers on the platform, along with 10 million impressions just in the last year alone. So let's dive into really what the core problem is here, and it's the fact that your content is invisible because your hook is weak. You're opening your post with generic statements like, I want to share something important today, or here's a quick tip for you. And people are just scrolling right past it because they haven't really got a reason to stop. Now, here's why weak hooks fail. It's because ultimately they don't create curiosity, they don't trigger emotion, and they don't really promise any kind of value. So ultimately they become forgettable. And when you've got a feed full of content competing for attention, forgettable basically means invisible. Now, the second part of your problem is that most people don't understand the psychology of hooks. They think a hook is just like the first sentence of a post, but a hook isn't just an opening line, it's a psychological trigger, because really it's designed to create a specific reaction in the reader's brain, which is either curiosity, surprise, fear, desire, or recognition. Now, when you understand that psychology, you can then engineer hooks that stop the scroll every single time. So here's the truth here. The best content creators on LinkedIn aren't just good writers, they're also masters of hooks because they understand what makes people stop. And then they use proven formulas to capture attention in the first line. And that's why their posts actually get read, shared, and commented on. So what are those formulas? What's the psychology behind the hooks that work? That's what we're going to break down in these next 3 steps. Now, before we get into the formulas, you need to understand the psychology of hooks and what really makes someone stop scrolling and start reading. So let's just touch on the 5 psychological triggers that work consistently on LinkedIn. Now, the first one is curiosity, and you can argue that this is the most powerful trigger because when you create a curiosity gap, when you hint at something interesting but you don't actually reveal it yet, people have to keep reading to close that gap. It's like the brain craves some kind of completion. So an example here could be, I lost my first 10K client because of one mistake. So then it leaves your brain to start thinking, well, what was the mistake? You have to keep reading to actually find out. Now, the second trigger is surprise. Now, surprise works because it violates expectations, right? When you say something unexpected or contrarian, people stop scrolling because their brain wants to understand why you're saying it. So an example could be, I stopped posting on LinkedIn every day and my engagement tripled. Now, that's the opposite of what most people think. So then they have to keep reading to understand more. Now, the third trigger is fear. And fear works because people are motivated to avoid pain rather than gaining pleasure. So when you call out a mistake, a risk, a problem, people stop because they want to make sure that they're not going to make that same mistake. So an example could be most consultants are sabotaging their LinkedIn presence without realizing it. And then it's going to lead someone to start thinking, well, am I sabotaging mine? And then they have to keep reading to find out more. Now, the fourth trigger is desire. And desire works because people fundamentally want outcomes. So when you promise a specific result or transformation, people stop because they want that same outcome. So for example, I could say, here's how I went from 500 followers to 50,000 followers over the course of several years. And then someone would lead them to think, well, I want that same result. And then they have to keep reading to actually learn how. And then the fifth one is recognition. And recognition works because people want to feel understood. So when you call out a specific pain point or a frustration that they're experiencing, they stop because they think to themselves, well, this person actually gets me. So an example could be, if you're tired of spending hours on LinkedIn and getting 0 clients, this is for you. And then that can lead them to think, well, that's exactly how I feel. And then they have to keep reading to find out more. Now, here's the key. Every single great hook uses at least one of these 5 triggers. And when you understand the psychology, then you can engineer hooks that stop the scroll every time. So let's go through some hook formulas. Now, hook formula 1 is the bold claim. So this is where you make a statement that challenges conventional thinking, or it goes against what most people believe. And it works because it triggers surprise and curiosity. So here's the formula. You want to make a contrarian statement that basically violates expectations. So some examples could be, I built a 55,000 follower a set of followers on LinkedIn by posting 3 times per week and not every day. Or cold outreach is dead, here's what works instead. Or you don't need 10,000 followers to make 100K on LinkedIn. Or I stopped using LinkedIn ads and my lead quality improved overall. So can you see how each of these statements, it violates some kind of predisposed expectation? Most people think that you do need to post every day to grow and that cold outreach is necessary, or that you need thousands of followers to make money and that ads might improve lead quality. And so when you challenge these beliefs, people stop because they want to understand your reasoning. So here's how you can use the same formula. The first step is to identify a common belief in your niche. The second step is to then state the opposite or challenge it directly. And then the third step is to follow up with proof or an explanation in the body of your post. So an example of this in actual action, the hook could be, I stopped posting on LinkedIn every day and my engagement tripled. The body could be, here's what I learned. Quality beats quantity. When I posted every day, I was rushing, my content was generic, but when I cut my posting frequency to 3 times per week and focused on high value posts, everything changed. My engagement skyrocketed, my DMs increased, and my authority grew. So you can see the bold claim hook works because it creates surprise and curiosity, and then people have to keep reading to understand why you're actually challenging conventional wisdom. Now, hook formula 2 is then the curiosity gap. So this is where you hint at something interesting, valuable, or surprising without revealing what it actually is. And it works because it triggers curiosity. So people have to keep reading to close the gap. So here's the formula. You put the specific outcome or event plus the hint at the reason/method. So an example here could be, I lost my first 10K client because of one mistake. Or a client doubled his revenue in 60 days. Here's what he did. Or I made 50K from one LinkedIn post. Here's the breakdown. Or 3 years ago, I was on the verge of quitting. Here's what changed. So can you see how each of these creates a gap? You know there's a mistake, a method, or a breakdown, or some kind of change, but you don't actually know what it is yet. So your brain craves that completion, so you end up keep reading. Now here's how you can use the same formula, right? The first step is to state a specific outcome or event. I lost a client, I doubled revenue, I made 50K, or I almost quit. The second step is to then hint at what you're going to reveal, hint that you're going to reveal the reason or the method, i.e. because of one mistake, here's what he did, here's the breakdown. The third step is to then deliver on the promise in the body of your post. So an example of this in action could be, the hook could be, I lost my first 10K client because of one mistake. The body, the mistake, I didn't set clear expectations. I assumed he understood the scope of the project and he expected something completely different. 2 weeks in, he asked for a refund. That's when I learned clarity prevents conflict. Now I have a detailed onboarding process for every client and I've never had that problem again. So you can see the curiosity hook works because it creates tension. People have to keep reading to resolve the tension and then to close the gap. Now the third hook formula is the pain point call out. So this is where you name the exact frustration, the challenge or pain point that your client is actually experiencing. And it works because it triggers recognition. So people think this person actually gets me and then they keep reading. So here's the formula for this one. If you are specific pain point, this is for you, here's why you're not alone. So an example of bringing this to life is you could say something like, if you're tired of spending hours on LinkedIn and getting 0 results, this is for you. Or if you're a consultant who hates cold outreach, here's the alternative. Or if you're posting on LinkedIn but nobody's engaging, you're making one of these 3 mistakes. Or if you're afraid to post on LinkedIn because of imposter syndrome, you're not alone. So you can see how each of these calls out a specific pain point, right? Spending hours with no results, or hating cold outreach, or getting no engagement, or that feeling imposter syndrome. So when you name the exact frustration your ideal client is experiencing, they stop because they feel understood. So here's how you can use this same formula. The first step is to identify the biggest pain point your ideal client is experiencing. The second step is to call it out directly in the hook. The third step is to then offer a solution, an explanation, or encouragement in the body of your post. So an example of this in action is the hook could be, if you're tired of spending hours on LinkedIn and getting zero results, this is for you. The body could be, the problem isn't your effort, it's your strategy. Most people are posting randomly, engaging inconsistently and hoping something sticks, but hope isn't a strategy. So here's what works: clear positioning, strategic content, and a 15-minute daily engagement system. When you focus on the right activities, you get results without the grind. Now you see, the pain point call out hook works because it creates recognition. People feel seen, and then that makes them want to keep reading. Now, the fourth hook formula is the specific number. So this is where you use a specific number to create credibility and curiosity. And it works because numbers feel concrete, they make your claim believable, and then they create curiosity about how you achieve that result. So here's the formula. You do specific number / result plus time frame or context. So I'm going to make up an example here, right? I went from 500 followers to 50,000 followers in 12 months. A client generated 100K in revenue from LinkedIn in 90 days. I spent $0 on ads and got 10,000 profile views last month, or 72 million impressions in 1 year. Here's how we did it. Now, you see how specific numbers make the claim more credible, right? 50,000 in 12 months is more believable than just saying I grew my following quickly, or 72 million impressions is more concrete than a lot of impressions. So it's the specificity that creates credibility. So here's how you can use this same formula. The first step is to identify a specific impressive result. In my case, it could be follower growth, revenue, impressions, clients, things like that. The second step would be to add a time frame or context to make it more concrete. And then the third step is to explain how you achieved it in the body of your post. So a full example here could be, I went from 500 followers to 50,000 followers in 12 months. The body could be, here's what worked. I posted 3 times per week. I engaged 15 minutes per day, and I focused on one niche. I didn't chase viral posts. I built authority through consistency, and over time, that consistency compounded into growth. The specific number hook works because it creates credibility and curiosity, and people believe the claim because it's specific, and then they want to know more about how you actually did it, right? Now, let me give you 3 more hook formulas that you can use immediately. The 5th one would be the question, right? So you can ask a question that your ideal client is already asking themselves. An example could be, what if you could generate high quality leads without cold outreach? Or why do some LinkedIn profiles generate and attract clients while others get ignored? Or are you making this mistake on LinkedIn? So you can see the question hook works because it engages the reader's brain. They start thinking about the answer, and then they keep reading to see if they have it. The 6th formula is what we call the mistake. So you call out a common mistake that people are making. So examples in my case could be, most consultants are sabotaging their LinkedIn presence without realizing it. Or you're wasting time on LinkedIn, here's why. Or this one mistake is costing you clients on LinkedIn. So you can see the mistake hook works because it triggers fear. People want to make sure that they're not making that same mistake. And then you've got hook formula 7, which is the before and after. So this is where you'd show a transformation based on where they are now versus where they want to be. So an example could be, from 0 clients to a full calendar in 90 days, here's how. Or I went from hating LinkedIn to generating 50K per month from it. Or before spending hours on LinkedIn with no results, after 15 minutes per day, consistent leads. So the before after hook works because it triggers desire. People want the transformation that you're describing. So here's the key. Now with these 7 hook formulas, use them and rotate between them, test them, and then watch how your engagement will start to improve and increase. Now, when you actually go about doing this, what you'll find is, first of all, your content's actually going to get read because you're using proven hook formulas. People are going to stop scrolling and start reading, and that will increase your engagement. The second thing is your authority is going to grow, because when people consistently read your posts, they'll start to recognize your name, and then they start to see you as someone who delivers value, and that recognition compounds into authority. The third thing is you'll attract more premium opportunities. So when your post gets read, shared, and commented on, you become visible to your ideal clients, and it's that visibility that will attract inbound leads, speaking opportunities, and partnership offers. And it's the exact same hook framework that I've used to build a presence of over 55,000 followers with more than 10 million impressions in the last year alone, and over 100 million for our clients. So this framework works as long as you commit to doing it. Now, if you did want to accelerate your results, you'll need a system that can really handle your content strategy, your content creation, your hooks, and the posting so you can focus on serving clients. And you'd need a full LinkedIn Media Engine, a done for you system that can really create this compelling content with proven hooks every single week. The same approach that's mentioned that has driven over 100 million impressions for our clients. So if you do want a full breakdown of how this full LinkedIn Media Engine works, I want you to just drop a comment below with the word hooks and I'll get the details sent over to you. So just to remind you, drop a comment with the word hooks below on this video. We'll get that completely free breakdown sent over to you to really turbocharge your ability to get results here. Now, I hope you found this video helpful and useful. I've enjoyed recording it and I look forward to seeing you on the next one.